Join ForumIAS Academy, trusted by hundreds of toppers, including IAS Rank 1 Shruti Sharma.
So welcome to the session. In today's session, we'll try and learn what anthropology optional is all about and what are the common questions which students face while they are trying to choose anthropology as an optional. While having discussions with students, there are certain common questions which everybody tends to ask, and most of the questions range around how much biology is engaged as a part of this optional, how many diagrams should we draw, right? How many kind of skeletal figures and figurines should be drawn? These are the kind of common questions which keep on reappearing again and again, right? So let's try to answer these questions today. Let's get a first-hand view of what and how many types of diagrams are we going to witness. And is there any logic in getting scared of biological or physical anthropology, so to speak? Right. So first and the foremost thing which we have to do when we are trying to zero down on any optional subject, irrespective of the background we are coming from, is to have a proper look at the syllabus. The syllabus will give you first-hand information that these are the topics which have been exclusively listed down by the commission, which has to be studied as a part of the optional, right? So that will be an ideal source for you to gauge from, that what kind of subject matter is centered around the subject which you are trying to study, right? Apart from that, if you try to get a brief knowledge about the topics which are being presented in that particular UPSC notification, that will be an added advantage to you. Most of the students come and they ask that what is the ideal book to start preparation with, or even not preparation, what is the ideal book to get to know anthropology? This is one of the most common questions. And if I frame it more aptly, the area around which the new people are wondering around, that how a novice can begin studying anthropology as an optional. So these are the questions which we are going to try to cater today, right? And going in that direction, one of the biggest myths about anthropology is that it has a lot of biology. That is the first myth which needs to be busted. Okay, I'll be loud and clear on this. When you're studying evolution of human, that is what anthropology means. You have to study it from both the perspectives. One perspective being how biologically or morphologically we have evolved, right? And the second perspective will be evolution of societal institutions like kinship, marriage, okay, rules of culture, social stratification, etc. All these social institutions also have evolved after a certain period of time. They were not the way they are today. Today, we might categorize marriages depending upon different laws, the way they are practiced in different parts of the country, beginning from endogamy to exogamy, right, to intercaste marriages, etc. But this was not the norm always. In fact, marriage as a social institution, how did it get its due place in the society? How did it evolve to a certain place it is sitting there today? That has also taken a lot of time. So first thing, this should be clear in our mind, that when we talk about human evolution, my ambit should not just revolve around the biological evolution of human beings, but I have to look at the broader horizon also. That if humans have evolved physically or morphologically, their society, their social institutions have also evolved parallelly. Clear? And that brings to the most popular question here, that how much of biological human evolution are we going to study? Biological anthropology forms approximately 35% of the entire subject. and it is broadly divided into two parts. In the first part, as I was just pointing out to you, we'll be talking about how evolution happened over a period of time, how gradually we have moved from one species to the next species, and while that gradual movement happened, what kind of evolutionary paradigms happened which made us Homo sapiens. What makes human beings special? That is what you will study in the initial part by way of fossil evidences. Irrespective of the fact of what your background is, you all must have heard of the term Neanderthal, Denisova. These are very, very popular terms, right now. So these are nothing but your ancient fossil ancestors who were not completely Homo sapiens or the modern human being. So therefore, they were quite different from how we are today, right? And to establish that evolutionary perspective, we study evolution. So you can see I've listed certain names of species over here, okay, where there are names like Homo erectus, Homo neanderthalensis, Homo sapiens, Denisovans. These are the names of ancestor fossil species of human beings or modern Homo sapiens who were not like us, right? But they have enabled evolution in a certain direction, and we can establish the path that how we became what we are today. The second part of biological anthropology is related to certain biological key concepts like genetics, human growth and development, evolutionary theories, and RDT or genetic engineering, which you might have otherwise also studied as a part of science and tech, right? This part you study as a part of science and tech also. And the term Denisova, which I was asking you if we are aware of this particular term or not. So if you all can recall, there was a Nobel Prize discovery last year in the field of physiology or medicine, where the Nobel Prize was given to Svante Pabo. Why? For the discovery of a technique called mitochondrial DNA analysis. And the seminal work which he did and he got the Nobel Prize was because he was able to extract the DNA fragment and analyze it meticulously from an age-old fossil, right? And when we are talking about such evidences, it becomes very difficult for fossil extracted DNA to be preserved very carefully. So that is why the Nobel Prize was given. So now you can understand that there can be a trend in the future where we can see question either on Denisova or what is the relationship between Denisova or human beings, or they can also ask us about the very technology, that what is mitochondrial DNA analysis method? Why is it important? Right? Similarly, when I talk about principles of genetics, we'll study DNA extraction techniques. You must have heard of DNA fingerprinting, right? It's a very important part of forensics. We all know it. You will study these principles, right? What is consanguineous marriages? For example, inbreeding. There are certain sections in the country where marriages within the extended family is allowed, right? That is an example of inbreeding. Now, what are the scientific ramifications of inbreeding? All these application-based topics will be discussed in this particular section. Apart from that, so when we talk about evolutionary theories, we all have heard of Charles Darwin, right? Considered to be a path-breaking study on how evolution happens in his seminal work. Now we'll try to understand that was there only Darwin who was able to articulate the very idea that how evolution happened? No. So there will be theorists and scientists who came before Darwin to give us an idea that how evolution happened, and there will be scientists who came after him also. Therefore, we categorize the theories into pre-Darwinian, Darwinian, and post-Darwinian category. In recombinant or DNA technology or RDT, you will study genetic engineering, which you study as a part of SNT. This is in brief about what physical anthropology or biological anthropology is about. When you look at the topic, you feel that you have to draw something like this, right? This is the fear which most of you have. You think that you're going to draw these. No. I want to correct you here, and this is the, busting of the first myth here, that when I'm talking of evolution, gradually from one species to the next species, I have to highlight certain seminal differences between the two, which are predominantly ranging in the skull area. Because as evolution happens, brain capacity increases. Okay, there are certain definitions which are given to the face. Okay, there is a proper well-defined chin. So ideally, we'll be talking about this. Okay, so this is not what you have to draw, but yes, this is what we will draw. This is your my answer to your question on what should I draw? Should I draw skeletons? No. You have to draw seminal pointers, seminal differences, pointing out that how evolution happened, right? And they will range most often around the skull. Now see, this is from a topper's answer copy. You can see how changes during human evolution has been depicted in this diagram. This is a lucid outline-based diagram of skull of Homo sapien or modern human being. If you look at the labeling of the diagram, you will get to know that, see, there is a part which has been centered around as rounded cranium, because this part of the brain is rounded, right? Prominent forehead, indicating that our ancestors did not have very well-defined foreheads, but we have. Similarly, having an elaborate chin. If you look at the earlier species, they did not have chin. They did not have a defined chin. So this is the type of diagrams you will draw. Right? This is the diagram of modern human being. And the scientific name is, right? So when we are asked questions with respect to differences between human beings today and the earlier ancestors, you will just draw a similar kind of diagram to give a comparative analysis that how both the species were different. What were the commonalities? What were the differences? Right? I hope you've got your first answer, that this is the kind of diagrams which are expected out of you. You are not expected to draw the entire skeleton, right? Now look at another sample, again from a topper's answer copy, that this is the kind of diagrams you will draw. So here we have shown types of teeth, incisors, canines, and molars. So you are giving an outline to portray that in what way teeth forms have changed during the evolutionary process, right? Similarly, you can see the rule of opposable thumb. This is another diagram. How can I hold a pen? Because I have an opposable thumb. If you look at monkeys and all, they cannot do it so meticulously as we do it. Okay, because their limbs are not designed like this. So if I have to depict this particular characteristic and how we stand differently from our ancestors, again you can show this diagram. Are these diagrams very difficult? Okay, so to answer your question, these are the kinds of diagrams which you will draw in your answers, right? This is a flowchart cum diagrammatic representation of DNA fingerprinting and the gel electrophoresis method, which you all have done in school, where we have to analyze a particular extracted DNA sample by running it on a screen after the electrophoresis method is completed. So now you can see we have a sample from where DNA extraction is done. You carry out gel electrophoresis, transfer to the filter paper, and observe it here in the computer screen. This is DNA fingerprinting in a miniature form, okay, to explain to you in a simplistic, very simplistic form. On the basis of the results which I observe on the screen, I can identify the criminals also. Okay, because you can take corresponding DNA samples of the suspects, name them A, B, C, D, and you can see that out of these 4 people, with whom this sample matches best. Clear? Is your query solved? This is the first one, that how much biology should I study and how much diagrams should I draw. These are the kinds of diagrams and flowcharts which are expected out of us, right? Now coming to the second very commonly asked question, does anthropology have an overlap with the general studies? If yes, how much? Because when you are under the notion that it is nothing but biology, you will have this perception that there is no overlap. So 3 sections I've pointed out here. First is archaeological anthropology, which is a subdiscipline under anthropology where we study about the historical ages the planet Earth has been through, starting from Paleolithic to Mesolithic to Neolithic to Chalcolithic cultures. Okay, and this part has a very significant overlap with what you study in ancient India. Entire ancient India with the names of the sites, okay, Indus Valley civilization, prominent findings of the IVC from different parts of the country, everything will be covered here. The second aspect is with respect to Indian society. It is a part of paper 2 in anthropology, where we specifically discuss that how Indian society functions, what are the foundational principles. For example, what is the Varna system? Okay, what is the concept of karma? What is the concept of purusharth? What is rin? Right? So these concepts you will study over here, and along with them, you will also study that how Indian society is continuously changing and what contemporary changes which have happened recently are impacting the society at large. For example, globalization. How has globalization impacted the women populations in the country? How has globalization impacted the economic systems, right? How has the feminist ideology impacted women? So these are application-based questions which you find in GS, okay? A facet of which is covered here also. The third part or the third overlap is with tribal India. So tribal India is part B of paper 2 in Anthro, where we talk about firstly the biogenetic classification of the tribals and then extensively discuss about the problems of tribal communities, the protections accorded to them by the Constitution, the PISA Act, the LARR Act, the FRA Act, etc. So where you'll get to know how different tribal communities function, what are their way of life, what is their subsistence method, what are the current issues they are having. Now think on similar lines that if globalization as a process has engulfed the entire world, in what way has it affected the tribal population? What is the status of arts and craft of tribal populations, which is considered to be the mainstay of their economy? How much percentage of tribal populations has been able to move away from slash and burn agriculture? So these facets will be covered under this part, where we'll discuss tribal issues in very much detail. And I was earlier also highlighting you that there are certain principles of science and technology ranging from genetics to mutations to cell biology, which will be covered in biological anthropology. Mitochondrial DNA analysis, as I was telling you, right? To put things more into perspective, we can take an example from current affairs. So if you have been following the newspapers, so the Kuki Meitei crisis is in news for a very long time now. It has been 10 days approximately. And you will see that this particular news you are covering as a part of current affairs, right? Since we have a paper here which is dedicated to tribal India, so you will study here in detail about the Kuki Meitei crisis. What is the crisis about? Okay, is it an ethnic conflict? Does it have certain history? Or is it a newer phenomena? So on similar lines, you will study the current affairs. For your GS also, you will study this here. Because there's a section of this crisis which focuses on demands for autonomy also. And demands for autonomy is a whole section which we study in tribal India. Right? What are the reasons for demands for autonomy? Why demands for autonomy are still persistently arising from every quarter of the country despite having dedicated Schedule 5 areas. So that means there's a certain lacunae in Schedule 5 areas which is not being addressed. So these kind of application-based questions will be answered as a part of your anthropology classes. One more example which we can talk about over here is about a bill which was proposed in Meghalaya, which wanted to change the matrilineality system of inheritance into patrilineality, because there was a certain consent in the state with respect to a certain population who believed that the idea of matrilineality in a certain way, where in Meghalaya, the inheritance of the entire property of the house goes to the youngest daughter. Okay. So therefore, the argument which was suggested was that because of this framework, the sons are not left with any kind of property. They do not even have collateral, okay, to put it in a bank or to get a bank loan sanctioned also. So therefore, it was a gross injustice to the rest of the children, and therefore, there was this bill which was proposed, which is now shelved. It did not pass. So, but it was in news last year. And then UPSC asked a question in Anthro Mains that differentiate between matriarchal and matrilineal societies. So since the issue was in news, they did not ask us about the facets of the legislation, but they focused and asked us about the theme around which the issue was circulating vehemently. It brings us to the basics now. No? What is the difference between matrilineal societies and matriarchal societies? Find out the answer to this. Okay, so these are the type of questions which we will deal with when it comes to tribal India, right? Another question students keep on asking is, before confirming or zeroing down on the very idea that I'll take anthropology as my optional, to get to know anthropology, whether it's suitable for me or not, how to decide whether I'll be able to grasp this subject or not, or as a layman, as a normal person, if I have to get to know what evolution, generally speaking, is all about for a layman term, you can refer to Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. Okay, it is not an anthropological text. It is a book about evolution and how in a certain age, different technology of the time takes over the earlier one. So indirectly, it explains how evolutionary forces are always operational around us at every point in time, right? That will give you an outlook whether you're interested in these kind of facets or not. For people who have already decided that yes, this is the subject you want to study for the exam, there are two books which can give you a lucid coverage. I'm using the term lucid coverage and not detailed coverage, right? To get a lucid coverage of the entire subject in a very easy language, you can refer to Anthropology Demystified by Akshat Jain or Anthropology Simplified by Vivek Bhasmi. These are introductory books which can give you a glimpse of the entire subject. And also, you can do a lot of value addition from these books in terms of the diagrams and all and examples which you can take out, right? Which you can use as a part of your answers, right? So I hope it clears your doubt that anthropology is not biology entirely. We talk about evolution, and evolution is of society also, right? Evolution is of Homo sapien also. So these are the varied angles which are covered in the subject. I hope your myths about anthropology are busted. All the best. Thank you.